Welcome to The Parent Thing. Hi, I'm Taryn, your host, and I'm so excited you're here. This is the space where we uncover the incredible potential of childhood, parenting, and the power of neurosomatic intelligence. Whether you're a parent, teacher, caregiver, or someone who deeply impacts a child's life, this podcast is your guide to nurturing emotional resilience, fostering growth, and building meaningful connections. Together, we'll explore cutting-edge insights, practical tools, and heartfelt stories to empower you in shaping the next generation. Join me each week as we dive into strategies, science, and stories that inspire and transform. Let's reimagine what's possible for the children we care about and for ourselves. Now, let's begin this inspiring journey together. Welcome back to The Parenting, the podcast where we dive deep into the art and science of parenting with a fresh perspective. Today, we're tackling something that so many parents struggle with but rarely talk about: how to break free from conditioned parenting patterns and avoid losing yourself in the process. Parenthood is a beautiful, but it's easy to get caught up in expectations, whether from society, family, or even our own childhood conditioning. Many parents wake up one day and realize they've lost touch with who they are outside of being mom or dad. But what if parenting didn't have to mean sacrificing your identity? What if there was a way to raise emotionally intelligent, resilient kids while staying deeply connected to yourself? Our guest today is Julie Behnken, a specialist in a lot of things, and she'll get into that. But she specializes in helping parents break free from outdated conditioning and parent from a place of authenticity, balance, and self awareness. In this conversation, we'll explore how to unlearn limiting beliefs, set boundaries without guilt, and embrace a parenting approach that feels good for both you and your child. So, if you've ever felt stuck in the shoulds of parenting or wondered how to reclaim your sense of self while being an incredible parent, this episode is for you. Let's dive in. Welcome, Julie.
Thank you so much, Taryn.
Thanks for taking the time out to come and have this chat with me. I was so excited when we connected because,
Yeah.
as a parent coach, like deconditioning and challenging beliefs and challenging the core of why parents parent the way they do is something I'm so passionate about. So, knowing that you talk about deconditioning and limiting beliefs and all that kind of thing, I was like, yes, this is a conversation I want to have. So, before we get into the meat, would you like to do a little personal introduction? Tell me who you are, how you got here, what you're passionate about, just anything you'd like to share with our listeners.
Yeah, sure. Um, I I describe myself as like an early parenting guide, a postpartum doula, and human design enthusiast. So, and human design is like based on uh what your astrology is, but it's like beyond that. So, but I love it.
Okay.
So that's a whole other aspect to what I love to do. And I find it very useful in parenting. So, um, yeah, I have worked with young children. I've worked my way like younger and younger and younger from like
Mm-hmm.
I taught college taught college briefly and like have worked my way like through elementary and down and um all the way down with toddlers and then infants and now and now parents as they're becoming parents for the first time. And after having my own Waldorf inspired childcare for 10 years, it was time for something different for me. And I knew that new parents and young families were not well supported just in our culture here. But through like the pandemic and everything in like 2020, 2021, it just really hit me hard in the face.
Mm-hmm.
And while I know that the childcare that I provided was very helpful to them at a time when, schools and programs were often closed, I wanted to do more to help the parents as opposed to
Absolutely.
caring for the children all day. And so I made that shift and it's been awesome. And often the parents would tell me when they would bring their child to me at, at most of them were like 1 to 1.5 to age 2 when they would come. And like, oh, I wish I'd found you sooner. And so now my my mission is basically to share with parents and parents to be what I wish I'd known when my son was born. He's
Mm,
almost 23, and the things that I've learned along the way, and that I learned doing with childcare and care for other people's children was kind of like my do-over in a way, that
yeah,
I couldn't do with my
yeah,
son.
absolutely. My brother has a son, and he is now doing my parent course.
Oh.
And my mom has decided to join in on it because it's her grandbaby. And she said the other day, I wish someone like you was around when I had to raise the two of you.
Mm.
And I think that's just so powerful because the reality is, and I say it all the time, that parents parent the way they were parented. And
Hmm.
breaking that cycle is so important to learn to parent the kid that you have
Yeah.
and not this generic blanket parenting.
Right. That's so
So,
true.
yeah. So, in saying all of that, parents parenting the way that they've parented, what does deconditioning mean in the context of parenting?
It means kind of digging yourself, recovering yourself and who you really are here to be underneath that that persona that you learned to be in from being
Hmm.
parented the way that you were. Maybe the ways that you felt you were. Well, for deconditioning, you have to start with conditioning, and that's learning the way that, things should be done, or the ways that you're too much or too whatever, or
Hmm.
unacceptable. And often it's to be accepted, to be uh, loved, if the loved seemed like it was conditional upon your good behavior or doing a certain thing or not doing a certain thing. And even just for your own safety,
Hmm.
depending on the situation. And those ways that we sort of modify and often make ourselves smaller or different in order to sort of fit that. And then obviously the words of our parents and the way they're talking to us becomes our own inner voice. And so then we have
Absolutely.
to kind of dig under all of that. And so in order for us to want to change that, and I think that when we change our parenting, we change the world. That, you know,
100% agree.
that
100%.
that in order to parent differently, we have to kind of go back and reparent ourselves in a way and acknowledge like,
Hmm.
oh, who am I really? And what of me is not really me.
Yeah, I'm actually looking for this book that I have that I swear by, and I'm not seeing it now, so it may actually be in my room, but it's called Reparenting Yourself.
Oh.
And yeah,
Hmm.
it's pretty cool because even when I'm coaching my parents, I'll say the things that I'm telling you on how to deal with and handle your child, I need you to apply that to yourself. Like, be the parent you wish you had to yourself. And
Hmm.
then that will project onto how you're raising your kid, but it's got to start with you.
Right.
So I
Yes, I
hear
say
you
the
when
same
you
thing.
say
Like
that.
who you are as a parent, is really
Exactly.
the key, you know.
How do you think that societal and generational beliefs shape the way we parent?
Well, like I said, with one, that's what we experience, like generational ones, that's what we experience as a child from our own
Yeah,
parents as we're growing, as our generation is growing, we're influenced by the generations before us and how they were parented and how they were parented and how they were parented.
right.
And basically, it's often a lot of unhealed trauma or dysfunction, that
Traumas.
just sort of gets
Yeah,
passed along. And yes, improvements can be made. And today we have so much more information and data to really to know more about like the psychological and, physical development of children and
Mhm.
how we carry things in our bodies, things like that. But we internalize those things, and that becomes sort of that's what's normal to you,
Yeah.
And so then really your default mechanism for living and then parenting when that happens sort of comes out of that what was normal for me,
Right.
and then societal that, things change where we had, you know, kids don't just walk down to the store by themselves anymore or whatever, or,
Absolutely not.
and or aren't left alone to care for younger siblings the way they would be a
Yeah.
couple generations ago, because we have different ideas of that. And our involvement in our children's lives is more now. But then there's also this sort of intensive, like impossible sort of parenting that we're supposed to do, to meet all the needs all the time and do,
Yeah.
the whole we can have it all. It's like we're somehow supposed to do it all. And if you can't, it's like your own individual problem as opposed to like a societal problem,
Hmm.
like myth that keeps us drowning in in
Yeah.
motherhood and
Yeah.
parenthood.
Absolutely. I actually said it in the episode that was released yesterday. I said that we run ourselves tired because we have this idea in our head that we have to keep the children occupied and stimulated 100% of the time that they're awake, and we don't. We
Oh
don't
yeah,
have to do that. Like, it doesn't
we
have to be
don't.
this consumption. And I also feel like that's where the screen time pandemic comes in, because
Hmm.
parents are so tired and think that they have to keep this kid occupied, and then the kid is stuck on a screen, which is not good for. But like, if you just let the child play, independent play is an amazing thing. And
Yes, yes, yes.
then you think of like, so I didn't grow up in the USA, but growing up for me, we played outside all the time. We were bored most of the time. And that's where like this imaginative play came in, and problem solving skills and all of that. And I get that it's not always possible to have kids outside, like, especially here, like with apartments and weather and all that kind of thing. But there's some things that I feel like should still be a thing in today's parenting. And then there's a lot of things that I feel that need to be, deconditioned.
Right.
So I it's not all good and
Agreed.
it's not all bad.
Hmm. No, that's so true. Yeah, I listened to that episode earlier today, and
Oh,
it
did
was
you?
awesome. Yeah, I was like, oh yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Um, when children are constantly entertained by us or screen things or other like adult-led activities, this lesson, this team, this whatever, activity after activity after activity
Right.
that are like really formed for them, and adults constantly playing with their child, but it's different when an adult plays with a child than when a child is playing by themselves or with
Playing
other
with.
children.
Absolutely.
And this lack of boredom, that's where creativity comes from, is from being bored and like, oh, I wonder what wonder what you can do, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I feel
And
like an episode on boredom or a conversation on boredom needs to happen because, when a kid tells me I'm bored, I'm like, yes, go be bored. Figure this out.
uh, I
Figure
know.
out what you can do. You can solve that problem without me. That's what I tell the
Right.
kiddos.
Yeah. Well, and it's hard for us to be bored too, because then we're just
Yep.
gonna be like, pick up the phone, scroll, scroll, scroll.
Exactly.
Which, and then,
Exactly.
we're modeling to them that
Yeah.
we just look at a screen when we're bored.
And I feel like that is a conditioning in itself, that you have to be doing something. You have to be occupied with something. Because I think
Oh,
of
and
my
it's,
kiddos in my class, when we're done with, let's say we've just finished our math worksheet, like there's five of them at my table. What are we going to do now? What must we do next? And I'll be like, you wait. That's it. You wait. And it's so
mhm.
hard for them. It is
Oh,
so
yeah.
hard for them. Wait, what does that even mean? What does that look like? What am I supposed to do in this wait? Like, you can see the confusion and they don't know what to do. And I feel like it's because we in this rat race, this go, 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 and this needs to come and this needs to come. And I feel like that's a good deconditioning. But in saying
Oh,
that,
yes.
my next question is a two-part question.
Hmm.
So, what are some common limiting beliefs that parents unknowingly pass down to their children? And then, how can they recognize these patterns and then break free from them?
Some of the limiting beliefs, or just beliefs that don't necessarily serve us or serve children. One is that is kind of our whole hustle, that we must always be productive, and our value is based on our productivity rather than, allowing ourselves to dream, to
Mm,
rest, to rest and just stop and be without that being considered lazy, you know?
yeah.
Um, and and there are people, some of us can go, and some people need more rest, or that's one thing like in human design that I like, where like my son is, he needs more rest than I do, or being at school for him was a lot, like being around all those different people, those the energy all day. He came home and just needed like time to like decompress a little bit. And
Yeah.
so this like, oh, you gotta, why aren't you doing, what are you doing? You should be doing your homework, or let's go here. Now we have that, we thinking we have to fill every minute of the day, not serving us. Also, just kind of limiting beliefs around emotions,
Hmm.
and if we're not able to, we're not allowed to express our emotions growing up. And I hear so many parents, like a child is upset and sad, falls down even, and just the whole like, you're fine. You're
You're
fine.
fine. You're okay. You're
You're
okay. Get
okay.
up.
You're
You're
okay.
fine.
You're okay. And it's like,
Or
no, they're not. They're crying in that moment. They will be okay. You know,
correct. But right now, let them feel what they are feeling.
right. And we cannot really hold space and be a safe person, or like a safe little space for their feelings when they make us so uncomfortable and we don't know how to process our own feelings. So in terms
Hmm.
of, breaking free of that, you've got to kind of look at your own emotional well-being and being able to sit with that. And I've often have long thought and said that we have to get more comfortable with crying for
Yeah.
children. And that doesn't mean like, you just let your kids be crying and miserable all the time, but
Yeah.
that is their especially for babies,
Hmm.
crying is communication. For young children who don't have the emotional intelligence and,
Hmm.
you know, ability to really understand and monitor and like discuss their feelings, they have to
Yeah.
just feel them. You know how you feel good
Right.
after a good cry. Well, just let it move through and it's going to be great. Because if you're pushing those
Right.
feelings down, it's going to come out some other way.
Hmm.
And then you're going to wonder,
Or
why are you
not, or
being
it
this
sits
way? You
in
know what I
your
mean?
body and manifests as some kind of like autoimmune
Right.
disease or joint issues, or
Exactly.
because it's
Yeah.
unprocessed stuff
Hmm.
just sitting there.
Right. Exactly. Or why did you do this? Or, then it's like misbehavior later. That's not, it's not about whatever's happening right now. It's, still that emotion that's
Hmm.
been sort of just distracted and
Hmm.
um not allowed to occur. So I would say that's
Yeah. And then,
a big one. That's like really, really big in our just
yeah.
societally, I think, is that we're not, as soon as a child is crying, we want it to stop. Just make it stop. Just
And
stop crying. Or
that's not even a child issue. That's the
no.
grown-up issue. That's because
Right.
you are uncomfortable with
Right.
emotion and you're
Yes.
projecting it onto a child who's actually quite free in their emotion. And it's
Right.
that emotional intelligence piece, right?
Hmm.
Allowing people to feel, like I think of being a kid and crying over something. And yeah, to an adult, it may be stupid, it may be unnecessary, but there were these words used when I was a kid: stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about. Like it was a
Yes.
threat, right?
Hmm.
And that taught me to suppress emotion. That told me that I'm not safe feeling. And for
Hmm.
that need for connection with my family, I'm just not going to feel, so that I may be accepted into the herd, if that makes sense.
Hmm. Oh,
And I
totally.
think
Yeah.
that's what has happened with a lot of younger generations. And we sit now in a very broken society
Hmm.
of people who have no emotional intelligence, who don't know how to feel their feelings, who don't know
Right.
how to name feelings, right? I feel like so many people feel disappointment or, these uncomfortable emotions, and then
Mhm.
it manifests as anger because they don't know
Right.
how to feel the other feelings. So that's one of my
Yeah.
missions in life, is to help parents raise emotionally intelligent kids so we don't have that situation.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. It's all about emotional awareness and allowing allowing children
Hmm.
to express that. I mean, it's developmentally appropriate for young
Hmm.
children, and all of us, but
I was just gonna say that.
especially for young children to just let it
Hmm.
move through. If you've seen a little one just have a terrible time, melting down, crying, have the biggest fit, and then after a while that passes, and then they're like pouncing, yeah, da 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 da, then they're back, and like, I've noticed in myself, yeah, they're fine, they're moving on, and I'm like, I'm still
Still
upset.
pent up,
Like,
you're still
I'm like,
angry.
I'm still mad about that whole nonsense.
Yeah,
And it's like,
absolutely.
oh, no, because I have not allowed it to move through, you know,
Absolutely. And
or
children
to
actually
acknowledge it.
have built-in mechanisms to regulate their emotion, their nervous systems. They have built in, so
Mhm.
like when a child is throwing a tantrum and, flailing and rolling and all of that, that's actually somatic movements that release. And I tell
Right.
my neurosomatic clients that you've got to be weird to heal. Like it doesn't look pretty, it doesn't look organized, it doesn't look structured, which
Mhm.
is what we conditioned to be. It looks like flailing, it looks like screaming out loud, it looks like these big, embarrassing, and I put that in
Mhm.
inverted commas, it looks like these big,
Yeah.
embarrassing moments, but it actually is such an incredible release, and it regulates your nervous system. And like you said, the kid has done what they need to do, and they've let it all out, and now they're good to go because their system is regulated. And then again, it's an adult problem because that's uncomfortable to us. We
Indeed.
try to control those behaviors, and then that conditions a child not to regulate their nervous system.
Right. And then, societally, if we're, in the infamous situation in a grocery store where your child is melting down in the grocery store, and then it's just like you want it
Hmm.
to stop because other people are looking at you and judging your parenting, and that you must be such a terrible parent. And why don't you control your child, quote unquote, control
Yeah,
your child,
yeah,
and that they should be controllable. Certainly, we have expectations about
yeah.
behaviors and what you can, should and should not do in a situation, but there are ways to acknowledge that respectfully, where like,
Hmm.
I know you're upset, but you
Hmm.
may not hit me, I won't let you hit,
Right,
or,
right.
I hear you but we're not buying the cookie now,
And
and
I'm
just
sorry that
kind of,
upsets you, and you're allowed to be upset
yeah,
about it.
right.
Boundary
But
still
yeah,
stands, you're not getting the
yes,
cookie.
right. To put those boundaries up. I'm not sure if I answered that question, but a lot of it is in terms of recognizing and then kind of breaking free of, beliefs like that. I think it's
Mhm.
helpful to think back when you were a child. If it's hard to imagine now, to think back to some instances when you were a child of when did you feel unseen, unheard,
Yeah, yeah.
not allowed to, oh, I have to not tell anybody that anything is wrong because their needs are more important, or I'm not supposed to
Hmm.
rock the boat,
Yeah.
things like those are those areas where you can then, by bringing awareness to that, you'll start to notice it when
Yeah.
that comes, and while we won't be perfect, you start to just maybe you'll catch yourself maybe after you say something you wish you hadn't said,
Yeah.
and then you'll
Yeah.
begin to just, oh, wait, I want to, and with reflection, how
Hmm.
I wish I would have done this differently, then
Yeah.
next time you have a better chance of doing it differently,
Absolutely.
each time.
Something I tell my parents, and it usually gets, I've gotten quite a couple of emotional reactions. I always ask them to ask themselves in moments where they're feeling that a child's behavior is like disrespectful, or it needs to be controlled, or like if a child is displaying a behavior that makes them feel uncomfortable. Is it because that behavior is wrong, or is it because they were not safe displaying that behavior as children?
Right. It's often just triggering what was wrong about our own behavior.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Yeah. Because the misbehave, a behavior is communication of a need
Mm-hmm.
that a child has, and when
Right.
that they don't know how to express in a healthy way. They don't know how
Mm.
to express it in a
And they
healthy way. So
shouldn't,
they're
because they don't have fully developed brains yet. They don't
right.
have
Yeah, they
the
won't. They don't.
resources that they need,
No,
like,
they're learning how to be
internally.
people and they're learning how to be little people from us. And we don't do it
Yes.
very well sometimes. And,
We we have a society that does not people well at all.
we know people very well. So,
Yeah.
right. And it's so, and I know that has been true in myself over the years of,
Mm-hmm.
what is it
Absolutely.
that gets me so mad about that? And it was just, yeah,
It's just like,
just,
why are you mad? It's not
mhm,
like, in the grand scheme of life and death, it's not that serious.
right. And
A
it's
little
not awesome
tantrum
in it,
is
Yeah, it's not,
no, it's not. And that's the other thing I tell parents is they are not trying to make you mad. It is not an intention to test your patience, or it's just them learning. They are literally learning how to be human. It is their first time here, just like it's your first time here. And we're
mhm,
just trying to figure it out.
right.
And if you look at it from that perspective, it kind of gives a little bit of empathy to be like, okay, let me go easier on this little kid.
Mhm.
At least I hope so.
Right. Yeah, same here. That okay, because we're the grown-ups. We're supposed to be handling
Sometimes I'm
this
like, are we though? Surely
and
we're not supposed to be allowed to be
yeah,
grown-ups.
yeah, I know, right? Well, that's the other thing. It's like we don't learn how, well, we do learn how to be parents, but we learn how to be parents often just like trial by fire of, on the job terrible training with nobody telling you what to do, or else the opposite of too many people telling you what to do, but then you don't know what to do because it's contradictory or it doesn't feel right
Right,
to you. But
right.
we don't learn like it the rare person has had like good parenting modeled to them, you
Mm-hmm.
know, or we spend little soapbox that I get on sometimes is just that when in pregnancy and birth, we focus on the birth. Just like if you're going to
Yeah,
get married to somebody, we focus on the wedding,
a
not
wedding,
on like the marriage,
the
which is like
life
the
after.
foreseeable future, of how you maintain it. And so the
Mm-hmm.
birth, it's all about the birth, this for the birth, that for the birth. But then
Right.
they let you take a baby home with you.
And you have to keep
And you have to
it
keep it alive and try to make it into a
alive.
healthy human being who can function in
Right.
the world and be an intelligent, emotionally intelligent person who forms attachments and healthy relationships and contributes to
Mm-hmm.
society and, has joy and success in their life with
Mm-hmm.
no help and little guidance. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. So, talking about this whole parenting journey, and I feel like social media has a lot to do with this romanticizing parenthood. So, like you're saying, you think of the pregnancy and you think of the baby shower and the cute little pictures with the hearts on the belly, and it paints this really, really romantic picture when the reality is those moments are not what's consistent, right? And parents tend then to become overwhelmed or overconsumed or that kind of thing. Why do so many parents feel like they are losing themselves in parenting?
I think there's layers to it. So on one hand, we do acknowledge kind of the what I would say is the sacredness of like
Mm-hmm.
pregnancy and, becoming and transforming and like growing a human in your body,
Absolutely.
you know, but but it ends that's kind of where it ends. The focus is
Mm-hmm.
on the baby registry and the stuff and having all the
Right,
gadgets and
right.
things like that without actual preparation for the parenthood piece, for really the sacred transformation that is happening. It's like a
Mm-hmm.
rite of passage, and really acknowledge, we don't have rituals of rites of passage. I mean, like baby showers are sort of a weird attempt at that, but
Yeah.
it's kind of turned into more of a consumerist view of it. Again, it's just based on like shopping and having the right things. And while there are
Yeah.
things that you need to have a baby, it's much deeper than that. And I think when we gloss
Right.
over the depth and shift that happens, it's hard to find yourself, and we have
Mm-hmm.
kind of this narrow view of what being a good parent or a good mom is. And it's also, like I said earlier, it's kind of this intense, impossible standard. And it's difficult to hold on to yourself because one, you have gone through a profound change and transformation.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
you are still you. You
Under it
are
all.
still you under there. Your hormones
Mm-hmm.
are different, your body is different, your life experience is different now, your priorities have probably changed, your brain chemistry has changed in ways um, through that process. And you're viewed differently by the people in your life and by society as a
Yep.
whole. One going from woman to mother, or the person without a child to being a person who has birthed and become a parent.
Person who has a human,
Right.
a whole human.
Yeah, right. And so that parent is still their own whole human being.
Mm-hmm.
The child is also their own whole human being. And I think with the lack of support that is common here, to where we don't
Mm-hmm.
really have the proverbial village to surround the new parents. We
Yeah.
weren't do it the way that we're doing it here,
Right.
where it's just you take the baby home and it's just you, and maybe if you've got parents or parents-in-law or other family members nearby, maybe they'll come help you a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and that's part of what I love when I found out about what a postpartum doula is. It's that support that everybody needs, that everybody deserves. Because when you're trying to do it yourself, the reality of parenting an infant and a young child, I mean, parenting is forever, and you're never not a parent once you're a parent. And there are always challenges, and things ebb and
Mm-hmm.
flow, and the challenges change. But especially in that first period, the basic needs, the physical needs are
Mm-hmm.
so intense that it is very easy to lose oneself because you're just in survival mode. But and that's natural, it's to be expected that we're going to be in survival mode when we're
Right.
recovering, and caring for a
Your
very
body's been through so much.
yeah, and you're caring for a very needy little infant, who isn't like fully developed yet. That's why they need us so much at the
Mm-hmm.
beginning.
Do you think that a parent kind of gets lost in parenting because they become unseen? So if they do have a village,
Mhm.
when the village surrounds them, it's for the baby. So I'm guilty of this. Like when my friends or whoever family member has a baby, I'm going to see the baby because give me a baby any day of the week. So I'll get to the
Mhm.
door and I'll be like, where's the baby? Okay, get out of the way and see the baby, right? And so they kind of shove to the side. But then on the opposite side of it, not having a village means that you are responsible for this. So there is no one taking care of you, there's nobody seeing you. So do you think that that kind of contributes to losing yourself in this parental role?
Oh, and completely. Yeah, because you're you kind of have to your own needs behind your baby in those first few, weeks and
Mm-hmm.
months and even years, as
Mm-hmm.
I was saying, just because they require so much of you. But
Right.
that's where the other support comes in that the village is for the mother. It's not for the baby. Because if the village is supporting the mother, she can care for her baby. The baby will be well cared
Yeah.
for if the mother is well cared for, and certainly care for the mother involves help with the baby, of course. But you're
Yeah.
right that we tend to focus all of it on the baby. And even and honestly, like, as a parent, and when you have the hormones right after, you don't necessarily want anyone else to hold your baby,
Yeah.
you know, but you need to be held while you hold your baby,
Mm.
or to be comfortable and then yeah, sure, hold the baby. But when everyone just wants to pass around this baby, it's like, whereas no, mama needs a rest, probably a snack or a
Yeah.
shower,
Maybe a bath.
right? That's right, some tea or water, something, some
Mm-hmm.
nutritious food and just a moment of peace and a little bit of like body autonomy when you've kind of,
Mm-hmm.
because you get touched out, if you've got a little one on you all the time, you just need a little space to just move your body
Yeah.
in the way that you want to move. And
Mm-hmm.
and we don't know that as well-intended people who visit new
Mm-hmm.
parents and like, oh, you had a new baby, right? We make it all about the baby. And
The
granted, the
baby.
baby is a precious, beautiful gift, and we all can't wait to see it.
No.
But we can't forget the person who
Parents.
who
Yeah.
brought this being into the world through themselves
Yeah.
and now has
Yeah.
quite the recovery ahead and the change in their individual body and sense of self.
Mm-hmm.
That's huge. That's where the support is really, really
What are
needed.
some signs that parents can look for? Like, what are signs that a parent has over-identified with their role as mom or
Mm.
dad?
Like having difficulty allowing others to to provide support for you and or your little ones. This idea that I'm supposed to be able to do it all, and being really hard on oneself and
Mm-hmm.
feeling really uh dissatisfied and shameful, kind of
I
beating
hear the
oneself up
term
and
mom
not.
guilt and dad
Hmm.
guilt a lot.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, and I feel like in our the way our world is, it's hard not to have some of that.
Yeah.
But when we're just really holding ourselves to an impossible standard, and there's
Yeah.
just so much guilt, and we really, and it's just kind of you feeling like like you just can't win. Whereas it's like, no, we need to take care of ourselves too. It's the cliche of the put your oxygen mask on first, but it's true. I mean, it's cheesy, but it's true. And your needs as a parent are the foundation of meeting your child's needs. So when you're just totally giving and depleting of yourself and not taking
Mm-hmm.
any time, feeling guilty, asking for an hour or whatever amount of time that you want to take a break or to do something that
Mm-hmm.
you've always loved and that brings you joy and happiness, even though that might look different now that you are a parent. If you're not ever doing anything for yourself, and if you're, um, married or with a partner, you've got to care for that relationship too, because that relationship
Yeah.
changes profoundly, and happy parents are the foundation of a happy, well-adjusted family, So if there's not time spent caring for the adults, the care of the child will suffer too. No matter how much you think, oh, I have to be the best mom, if you're
Mm-hmm.
if you're doing that and pushing, pushing, pushing to be this great parent, but you're not taking care of yourself, who is the parent, you can't do it. You're just gonna
Yeah.
fail
And you're
and feel
pouring
terrible.
from again, that proverbial empty cup, right? You're
Right.
pouring from an empty cup. There's nothing to give.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Yeah.
you end up projecting that frustration or emotions
Mm-hmm.
onto the kiddo.
Right. They can
Oh,
tell when
yeah,
you they can tell, they can feel it and internalize that. Hmm.
absolutely. How can parents reclaim their individuality while still being present for their children? How can they set healthy boundaries without feeling guilty? How can they take care of themselves and have a strong sense of self while having to care for especially the younger kiddos?
Hmm. Well, community is very important in this, whether it's in person or even like an online group of other parents that are in, a similar boat than to you. You know what I mean? They're kind of
Mhm.
living it like you are. One for just support and feeling understood and seen, because people who aren't in the throes of parenting young children or who aren't parents, just they can empathize and be there, but they won't understand the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is immensely helpful. What was the question again? Sorry, I'm thinking of too
So
many
I
things.
was saying, how can they reclaim their
Okay.
individuality while still
Yes.
being present for their children, setting healthy
Mhm.
boundaries without feeling guilty,
Yeah.
and incorporating self-care
Right.
for that sense of
Yeah.
self?
By giving children and little ones the freedom of movement and like kind of uninterrupted sort of playtime, even for babies, uninterrupted playtime is
Mm-hmm.
like laying on their
Mm-hmm.
back, looking at their hands or the shadow on the wall, and giving that, allowing them some space to just be without
Mm-hmm.
always, talking all the time and engaging and that, putting things in their face and,
Yeah.
but just
Yes.
giving them some space, which, will ebb and flow in terms of how long that work they can do that in at different phases.
Mm-hmm.
But by having that, you're setting them up, one, to explore their body and the world and take it all in. Everything's new when you're
Mm-hmm.
little. And then you're also giving a little bit of space to yourself, to care for you.
Yeah.
And while they're playing or while they're laying there, if they're happy, then maybe you're doing something nearby that brings you peace and some joy. Maybe you're reading, or maybe I would knit a lot while children were playing, or and including them as they grow and are able in the things that you must do as a parent builds
Mm-hmm.
connection with your child,
Yes.
which
Absolutely.
which adds to the satisfaction of your parenting, you know, as opposed to just like you have to wait for the child to be, they have to be on a screen or in bed
Mm-hmm.
before you can like get anything done. And well, yes, there are times when it's hard to get things done with little children around. But when it's something as much as possible to include them in it or to do it while they're with you, that is creating space for you to care for yourself. Like I said, to make a priority of, even if it's just 10 minutes a day, to do something that makes you feel good, whether
Mm.
it's just 10 minutes alone with some peace and quiet, or you're dancing or singing to your favorite song,
Yeah.
or you're taking a walk outside, or getting on a phone call with a friend, or going for coffee, whatever it is, a little something
Yeah.
that makes you kind of feel human again. You know what I mean? That you're
Yeah.
still like the person in there that you want to be and that you were, that person is
Yeah.
there. And in terms of boundaries, I mean, that has to be communicated with some family and partners, that, oh, I could just really use this little thing by myself, and, or let's
Mm-hmm.
do this together, or this is what I need. Can you do this for me? I know
Mm-hmm.
it was really hard when I was postpartum. I'm sure my mother would have done, and, other people that visited would have done more if I had asked, but I didn't know what to ask for. I wasn't
Mm.
asking for help. And so
That is a difficult thing,
that's a difficult thing. And while I don't know that it's
especially.
necessarily a boundary, but it's sort of like, and this is something you can think of and like prepare for, like if pregnant and getting ready for a birth, or, waiting for the adoption to happen or whatever, is like, these are some things that, what things would make me feel good and what do I anticipate having help with? Because then you have a list of just like, oh, well, would you mind transferring the laundry? Or could you bring me a snack?
Mm.
Or, oh, would you pick up this food? Or,
Mm-hmm.
etc. Or just take the dog for a walk, or my other child to the park or something. Um,
Yeah.
and that helps create a boundary, one around you getting your needs met, but in a way
Mm-hmm.
that invites people in, because other people do want to help, they just don't know how. And then in terms of like, when we're trying to parent differently from our, deconditioned and more healed self,
Yeah.
we will hear from others, you know, perhaps resistance or misunderstanding of why we're doing what we're doing.
Mhm.
We can acknowledge that they have good intentions for us. They kind of compliment sandwich of like, or of talking to, other people's parents of that this is good and this is good, but like, oh, I thank you. I know you can acknowledge like something good in what they're saying,
Mhm.
or that that they mean well and want the best for our relationship and for, my baby's development. But we're trying this right now. This is working for us.
Yeah.
But thank
Yeah.
you for your input.
Yeah.
I mean, could be a point where you want to not have their input, but generally you start with,
Yes.
thank you for your input.
Yeah.
We're trying this now. And if they're signed, you can state research says this, or we're doing it this way. This seems to work well for our family. Um, and then just sort of bringing back their little sense of self that so many of us have really had to repress and move, and that then
Yeah.
requires all of us to decondition later. Whereas if we can foster authentic development and trust in themselves as people, then they won't grow up doubting or looking outside of themselves for validation and what do I do, because they will be grounded in themselves. And then we
So
ground ourselves to help that.
I love that you said that because my next question actually is how does a parent's unhealed trauma or conditioning impact their children's emotional development?
Mm, right. Yeah. Well, it certainly will come out, it seems. If we're unaware and just kind of parenting from like default mode,
Yeah.
from like, well, what we experienced, and then we're going to repeat that pattern because we haven't made the conscious decision and sat with, how did that make me, how did that make me feel? And how do I want my child to feel? And how do I want to feel as a
Yeah.
parent? Because a lot of parents, if you think, you know, children experience a lot of parents who are not happy. The parents are not happy and they take it out, because, and then the children are then feeling not valued too. And we're just perpetuating this kind of unhealthy cycle of poor self-worth and doubting ourselves and,
Hmm.
pleasing others rather than doing what's really going to be good for us.
What are some ways that parents can model emotional intelligence and self-regulation for their kids?
First, I think, is to just pause.
It's
Try to
difficult in today's
pause,
society.
you know, when we're
That's a big
starting to
one.
feel, yeah, when we're starting to feel riled up or triggered, to just pause, because that reaction that wants to come up, like we were saying earlier, is very likely something that's unhealed in ourselves that doesn't necessarily have to do with the situation that's happening with our child right here. It's stirring up, something old. And so, and we've, and I think we've gotten to where we move so fast. We think we have to do everything right now. Like we have to fix it right now or just in the moment. And there's no time. Just like just take a breath, just pause for a moment, observe. We can learn a lot by observing our children and by observing
Hmm.
ourselves and paying attention to where we're feeling things in our bodies, paying attention to the behavior, what they're communicating through their behavior, and what need might be unmet in them, because for children, often it's a need for connection, hunger, sleep, you know,
Hmm.
uh, fixes a multitude of things. And so
Hmm.
by bringing awareness to those things and taking a moment, just trying to take that little extra moment before we snap back or yell something, we can interrupt that unhealed piece of ourselves. Otherwise, you're likely to do to your child what was done to you if you don't want, And we won't be perfect, but,
Hmm.
and then we have the opportunity to look at that and to repair. We don't
Yeah.
have to be perfect. And it's good for even like the fact that, oh, I made a mistake. We can repair that. We can acknowledge it. And our children will see us, see the fact that we make mistakes and that we learn from them and that we can try again and we're still okay and that they're still lovable even when
Mm-hmm.
we don't like what they do, but we still love them and
Yeah.
we're still worthy of love even and love ourselves even when we do the wrong thing sometimes.
Last question for you today.
Mhm.
How can parents create a parenting approach that aligns with their values, not their conditioning?
Well, there's certainly a lot of parenting information out there.
Right. There's
There's
a
a whole
lot of
lot.
external factors that, so
Mhm.
how do you
Mhm.
kind of tune out the voices? Because I mean, there's so much pressure and it's overwhelming. There's so much pressure
Mhm.
on social media to be this perfect parent
Right.
and to do things a certain way. And then, these people will be like, don't co-sleep with your kid. And then there's people like co-sleeping is the best thing. And then there's breastfeeding is what the kid needs. And then there's other
Mhm.
parents like there's just so much overwhelming information. So that's
Mhm.
why I asked the question,
Yeah.
how can parents create a parenting approach that aligns with their values
Right. Well, you have to be
and not their
aware of,
conditioning?
yeah, you have to be aware of what your values are.
Mm,
And I think that's kind of like a conscious process that uh that more people need to do, frankly. Because if you haven't really thought about what you value, then that also leads you more likely to go down the road of like your conditioned response
mm-hmm,
because you haven't really thought. So, what is it that you value in when you compare the parenting messages that are coming in? Sure, there might be certain things, and you have to remain flexible because you don't know
mm-hmm,
what will work for your child just based on a parenting approach. But you can certainly, like, oh, I think this is aligned. I've worked like in Montessori schools and Waldorf schools,
mm-hmm,
and there are things about both of those that I like. And I talk to parents that, people that were parents before I became a parent and that I liked how they parented their child or that I didn't like how they parented their child. And so part of it is just like, okay, this is what's important to our family. I mean, is it important that you value, free expression with your child or that, that you want to allow their emotional and foster their emotional intelligence?
mm-hmm,
Is it important to you that you spend so much time outside? Or, what are your views on screens? And,
mm-hmm.
certainly there's research, so we know. I mean, ideally, like children would have no screen time. They'd play outside. We'd all have, organic food with no artificial colors in them. You know what I mean? So you kind of set yourself up on a spectrum, I think, of an ideal, but know that it's really hard to do all those things, and the people on
Yeah,
social media aren't doing all those things perfectly either. They're only showing
right.
you what they want you
The
to
best
see.
parts of, right.
They're only showing you that part. Who knows how long they had to prepare that little setting or how many
Mm-hmm.
other people, especially if it's somebody that's more of an influencer in that way, not just,
Yeah,
they probably have a staff, it's kind of like
yeah,
Martha Stewart is not like has a staff
right.
to make all those impossible things. You know what I mean? And um,
Absolutely.
and so you have to give yourself some grace
Yeah.
and know that it's all I mean, parenting is kind of like a long experiment. We
Mm-hmm.
choose to align ourselves in certain ways, and that is our starting point. And then based on what we need and what our child needs, we do have to grow and adapt. But we can
Yeah.
kind of just we can kind of realize within ourselves like what our overall goal is, like how do we want our child to feel? I would say focus on feeling. How do you want to feel in your daily parenting? How do you want your child to feel? How do you want them, what do you want them to remember about their childhood? Look back later. Yeah, and then and then give yourself some grace, because you're learning how to do it. They're learning, you're both learning. You're both learning how to just like do all of it. It's all new. And
Mm-hmm.
none of us get up and like ride the bike perfectly the first time we get on. We have to
Correct.
learn. We're learning, they're learning, we're learning together, and we're going to get it wrong sometimes. But that there are so many opportunities to try it again. Get. Like I have shifted, and as you learn more, you will discover even more. It will expand. And so
Yeah.
you kind of start general and then work more specifically, if that makes sense, because it has to be fluid.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
grow and change, and as you grow and change.
I know I said that question was the last question, but I do have one more for you.
Okay.
Um, for listeners who want to reach out to you, how and where will they find you?
Social media wise, I'm mostly on Instagram, and it's just at
Hmm.
Julie Behnken,
Okay.
JuliebEhnken. Um, and then my website is and my company is Star Song Postpartum and Beyond. So it's
Hmm.
I can maybe write that out for you, but it's Star Song
Yeah,
Postpartum
I'll put it in
Beyond.com.
the
Yeah.
I'll put it in the show notes.
Okay.
Julie,
Wonderful.
thank you so much for your time. I've really enjoyed our conversation. Like I said to you before we started recording, that I'm such a huge advocate for challenging parental beliefs and
Mhm.
the why behind how we parent and rewiring those beliefs. So deconditioning is a huge thing for me, not just parents, but teachers, caregivers. I see a lot of things in my workplace where I'm like, oh, you can see the conditioning here coming through from the grown up that's
Oh,
working with
yes.
these kiddos.
Oh, yes. I've seen it
Um,
there too.
I say it often, but the more I'm an educator, the more I hate the education system because it's not for the child. It's
No,
just
it's
not.
really not designed with their true needs in mind.
No, it's
Mhm.
not. But again, I really appreciated this conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time out and chatting with me.
Oh, you're
And to
welcome. I
you,
loved it. Yeah, thank you so much.
absolutely. And to you listeners, thank you for tuning into The Parent Thing. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with another parent, teacher, caregiver, and subscribe for more science-backed parenting insights. Until next time, remember change happens one day at a time for you and the little ones you care for. Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning into the parenting. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you have any questions, feedback,